Alrighty, hello everybody, welcome to History Night with Mr. Knight. This is the first time we're having this, and we're very excited to have Mr. Knight tell you guys all about Auburn Hills. Before we get started, I do want to do a couple of introductions. We have quite a few people here. I want to start by introducing our Mayor Pro Tem, Mr. Eugene Hawkins. As well as, of course, Mr. Henry Knight. And then as well we have our city manager, Mr. Tom Tangi. And then the, from the Historical Society, Tyson Brown.
The big bike rider.
Oh yeah, the big bike rider. All right, so then I'll go ahead and pass it on over to Mr. Knight. Oh, and I am Jackie. I am the program coordinator for the senior services.
Nice.
Well, thank you everybody for coming. These mics bother the heck out of me. Well, you know, you always, I'm doing this, and I'm gotta take my notes, so I know what I'm saying. First, I want to thank or comment that all through the time I've been in the city, from about 1970 on, the basic people in government have worked together. Now, there were some exceptions. Bidding Warden was a wild clerk back in those days, but we've always basically had a team working, and that's why we're so successful as a city. And so I want to comment, that's so very important. Once in a while we disagree on something, but we're always having the city important, and the people through the years have done that. Well, I got to tell you, got to start a little with my history. How did I get to Auburn Heights? I came back from the Korean War, and I was doing a master's degree in industrial engineering at Michigan. And I was reasonably shy, but I had a friend, Claire Patton, and so I asked Claire if she'd arrange a date with Arlene Torch, which she did. Well, in exchange for that, I had to get her a date, which I got with Dick Wilson, who had been a college buddy of mine, and he was working on his master's degree, and we've both been Dickory and that type of thing. So I fixed him up, and it went on. And then I thought, wait, I'm missing something here. And so I started dating Claire. And by December, I proposed to her. And so on the third Saturday of June of '56, she graduated with a elementary education degree from Eastern Michigan. The following week, we were married at the Evangelical Home for the Aged. And that's a whole another story. But anyway, we moved to Lake Orion to a little one-room apartment because she was teaching at Blanche Sims and I worked in Rochester. A friend of mine, Jack Pardon, at work, had built a home, and he was only 2 years old, and he decided he wanted to go to Nashville, Tennessee to work. And so he put his house up for sale. And I got interested in it, and he wanted $18,000 for it. And Claire earned $4,000 teaching the first year, so we used that as a down payment on the house. Well, I didn't have any idea where I was buying. I knew the location, but it was Pontiac Township. And so we moved in, and I still live in the house. And we started having kids and being involved. And that was in the early '60s and so on. And I had a neighbor who came to me Gordon Hamilton. He was a general foreman on a shop at GM Truck, and he said he was on the school board in Avondale, and he was looking for somebody to be on the school board. And he came to me and says, Henry, you got a college degree, you need to either get involved in schools, in school leadership, or the township. Well, thank goodness I picked the township. The most thankless job there is being a school board member. And so that's how we got here and so on. Well, he got me interested. Now before that happened, my dad had been treasurer of Salem Township over in Washtenaw County. And I was really never interested in politics there. But I got interested in an annual meeting that we were having. You see, as a township, you had an annual meeting, and the citizens could come in and vote for anything they wanted. Well, that day, we were asked to approve the water and sewer in Bloomfield ordinance. At the township, we had no water except for one little unit up here north of, just north of here. And they asked us to pledge the faith that we pay the bills for the water and sewer because the state required that. Well, the developer made good on that. And so it was the first real development in the city, other than the subdivision that I lived with down the Gray Road, that had just finished up a 200-home subdivision. And so they started with the 532 homes. That was the first real growth of the township. And it introduced water and sewer. Now we joined the Evergreen New Sector for sewers. And we bought in 5% of the capacity. So that's all we could have. Now we made the mistake at that time, because it was legal, and we hooked up the storm sewers to the sanitary sewers. And all of a sudden we started using too much. And so the state, the U.S. had changed their law. And so Ronnie Moniz, who worked at RTPW, who was assigned to CAST, and he put in 528 septic or sump pump things and hooked them up to the thing. And so we always had fun. We called him, he was the pump king. He got into everybody's basement. Well, that was the first real development, was Spoonfield Orchards, and I got to get rid of my notes. John Hamilton was taking care of him. So, and so we voted as a citizens to support the development. But that day it rained, and it was muddy. Now this was back behind the old fire station in township office at Pontiac Road, Nutmeg. And I don't know how many of you remember that. It was by the Blue Skies Theater and so on. But it was muddy that day, so we citizens voted to pave the parking lot. They paid the money, but we read it, and that pavement was put in, and it lasted until the place was torn down. But it was just like, oh, I became enthralled because of what Gordon Hamilton had said. And so I went and applied for a position on the planning commission. Now I think Roy Davis was the supervisor, I don't remember. And Mike Davis was his son who served on the council later on and so on. And in those days, it was very political. The Democrats were in charge. Well, I never opened my mouth to what I was, except I'll say, at that time I voted for Barry Goldwater. Probably was good, but so they appointed me to the planning commission, and the second year I became chairman. of the planning commission. And Greg Willett here basically took over for me, and he served longer, because I only served 20 years on the planning commission. But anyway, a little personal notes. Steve Lahosky, our planner, who lived in Booneville Orchards, was a local boy, was very interested. He was our planner, and he discovered in talking with the township clerk that our zoning map, which controlled where stuff went, was never approved. And so we had a meeting in the Gold Room at Oakland University. Now, Oakland University has started in '57, the last same year that Claire and I came to town. And by that time, they had the Gold Room. And we went over and we spent a couple days and we went through everybody's property. And the Planning Commission made a recommendation, which was basically the same as what we had, to the Township Board. And the Township Board approved it. So finally, we had zoning in. But then, Steve came to me and said, we do not have a master plan. What's a master plan? Well, that's what state law requires, that the Planning Commission determine how the governmental agency will develop. And so we put our heads together and we started talking about what we could do. Avon Township had a master plan, and we looked at it, and it showed here was commercial, and here was manufacturing, and here was home. We said, we have a faintest idea what's going to develop. Remember, we were a dump. We were poor as church mice. In fact, they levied a tax on all the sites on Updike Road, an ad valorem tax. Just said, okay, we're so much in tax to them. And we did that for 2 years until the state caught us and they said, you can't do that. And we had to refund all the money with interest and so on. But by that time, we'd gotten enough farther. Well, so we put our heads together and said, we don't know what to do. Let's make it simple. Let's make a map that says it's going to be residential, it's going to be non-residential, and it's going to be undeveloped. And so we put together a map in that effect and presented to the Planning Commission. Now what we did on that is, all of the land that was up in this area here was basically empty. I think we had some subdivisions here, subdivisions here. The undeveloped areas where there weren't homes, we made predominantly non-residential. And the reason we did that, and we recommended that to the Planning Commission, was that then, if you remember, in 1968, the riots were in Detroit, and if you didn't know it, all the rubble from that, there is buried on the corner where I-75 turns onto M59. That land was level when I came, and it's now 6 or 7 feet high. All the rubble from that riot. Well, then it moved on, and of course, civil rights were moving forward in a positive manner, but they decided in Pontiac that they would have equal representation in every school based on the racial mixture of the city. So they bused people all over the place, took them out of the neighborhood and so on. Well, as a result, if you'll remember, they burned the buses and they raised a big fuss. And so we saw that and we said, in the 40s, Danny Whitmer was their superintendent, and they were a marvelous school, but they started to go downhill. And it was for several reasons, partly that, and so on. And we were bigoted, and we said, houses in a declining school district don't sell very well. And so we made the choice of making it all non-residential because it was a Pontiac school district. Well, that was the one decision that determined what we became today. Because as we went, the master plan was used, and we started things to happen. Lemon Hendricks, our first city manager, was a great believer in developing and so on. He developed the Tifa district downtown, which means changed the downtown. But he convinced us that we should give abatements. We should allow forgiveness of taxes for 6 or 8 years, but we put a requirement on it. If you get forgiven of your taxes, you got to stay at least 6 or 5 or 6 years beyond the expiration of your tax. Well, as a result of that, we only lost 2 businesses the entire time where they bailed out ahead of time and had to put the taxes back. Okay, so we approved the zoning map, but the big thing was we made the master plan. This is the there's copies over on the table. This is the master plan of today. It's much more exotic, but it's still basically one or the other. And that was the thing that caused us to bring all the industry. Now, at that, earlier than that, and we talk about our DPW is way out on the edge of the city. It's way up over in this area and here, or up in here. And people say, why did you put it there? Well, the county was going to put an incinerator in there. And by us buying the property and put our building up, they couldn't build the incinerator. And that was we felt a good development for the community. That was the thing. A little later on, they tried to put a prison on the Joslin and Brown Road. The hill there where all the stores are, they were going to put a prison in there, and we pleaded with the state and it would kill our economic development, and the state supported us and backed off and didn't require that. So, that begins. We had done both field orchards, and we got it going. And then, the next biggest event, we had the map now that was non-residential, as my Comerica came to town. Don Mandish was their chairman of the board, and he had 3 sites to build the big building that would load the armored trucks and would sort canceled checks. If you're old, you'll remember the canceled checks you used to get back. And so Don Mandish says, I want one site on the river. That was the Clinton River going through. And so they built the big building that is there still today and was the first of the development. Well, then they said, we want to control our neighborhood. So in the 805 acres diagonally across from them, came from sale shortly later. They bought it. Now that includes what we're standing on right now, or sitting on right now. That was part of that 805 acres. And Comerica bought it so they could control what went there. You got a name, fellow, Sosat Brothers had built that building and was a developer, and so they got Phil Hodak, a good friend, and put him in charge of selling. Well, he found Chrysler, And he found the, developed the industrial park and all that stuff. Well, let's go back to Comerica though, as going. Comerica at the time wanted to have a branch of the bank in the city. And so at the end of that year, you couldn't put any more banks in. And so they rushed and put in a bank. Their bank consisted of a portable house on the Oakland Community College campus. And we looked at that after they had put it in. They didn't come to the township and gain approval or anything, they just put it in. And so we looked at it and said, well, that's commercial property, a commercial business on public property. So we made them develop a piece of a separate area, and they started paying tax on it because they had the trailer. Well, then they discovered that the trailer was over gas line, and so they had to pick up the trailer and move it back farther and relocate it. It was a sample of not checking out what they had. Well, let's go back. That was on Oakland University. When Clara and I came to town in '57, OCC was a Nike battery. It had intercontinental ballistic missiles on it, and I just discovered from a source from who were close to it that they had atomic warheads on there. Now, we never shot any of them off, but if you're old enough, you remember the fear of Russia. And so that was an army base and went on for a while. Then they cooled off, and the first chancellor of Oakland Community College was a naval officer, and he had gone out, and he knew enough people, and the feds came to him and said, do you want to buy on behalf of the county the 3 Nike battery sites in Oakland County and make them into a junior college? And George Mosier, who was the first chancellor, he said yes on behalf of the county. He became the first chancellor, and he named the campus Auburn Hills. And that was significant later on as we visited the name. Okay, where I go? Okay. Let's see if we were there. They developed that, and it became the college and so on. And so then we came to the point of the crises. The city of Pontiac bought that parcel right there. It was a farm, and at the following meeting, they annexed it. In those days, cities could annex from townships without any trouble. And they literally stole that land from us. And what they did is, they went down to Sam Allen, who happened to be the junkyard dealer on Orange Lake Road, and said, Sam, move your stuff up there, and he did. And I think the junkyard is still there under different management. But they also built the trash mountain. And the trash mountain was their place to put landfills. Well, that leads us to our landfill. I'll come back to that in a minute. We got a landfill that we didn't want. At that time, the state required that you have 20 years of capacity to store your waste within the county. Well, there wasn't enough capacity there, And so they just arbitrarily came and bought that property and said, there you are, Plank Township, you got a dump. And we fought and we were unhappy and so on, and but there was nothing we could do. Well, the second year, the landfill developer came to us as a city and said, we want to work with you. We want to be accepted in the community best. And of course, we were stuck with it. So we made an arrangement with them to collect tipping fees. Every yard that went in, they would pay us so much. And we probably took in about $7 or $8 million through the years. Is that we've used for our particular exercises and so on. Going back to Chrysler purchased the lower half of the property that was going. And since Comera had built that building, they started up a little group of sites out here for development, and they've got Chrysler, and with that in mind, they were off and running, and the complex was cost $1.2 billion originally, and then they came along and built a wind tunnel later on that was run by 3 people. And the reason for it was there were only 4 wind tunnels in the U.S. and you couldn't get time in them to test your cars. So Chrysler bought their old one. Well, jumping back just a little, we have the crises. They stole the land. So the talk began, Veronica New and Dorothy Babb and Bob Bruce making a group, Walter Smith, I think. I was not involved, but they said, we need to become a city. Well, before they did that, we became a charter township, which made it harder to annex. But we knew that wasn't. So in about 1978, 79, they put an application in to the state of Michigan to become a city. Well, we didn't have much of a downtown. We didn't have a lot of stuff. We had Oakland University, but they were standoffish at that time. Well, at that time, and so on. And the state said, well, we don't think you're big enough to be a city. We spent 2 years meeting the requirements, showing them that we had enough know-how and stuff here that we could become a city, or at least apply to be a city. So, got the approval, and we set up and elected a charter commission, which was 9 of us, and I was part of it. And we went through. Now, we had a consultant that knew how to write charters. There were only 3 things, I think, I'm not sure I'll remember all 3, that we were insistent upon. 1, no mayor. We had to be a city manager type business. Let's see, I'm not sure what the others, but that was the most important thing. We did not want a mayor city type. We'd seen Pontiac, we'd seen that, and it was a disaster, and we said that had to be that way. And so then we finished on the charter, and it came to time to name it. And they suggested Meadowbrook and things that Avon Township owned. And after we exhausted them, there's 2 records. The record that Truck Pomeroy wrote in his book is wrong, but the newspaper article I have is right. After a pause, I said, well, let's name it Grusnickville. Because Bob Grusnick was on the committee and I always said it was good for a laugh. And then I didn't realize at the time, I stole Judge Moser's name. I said, the only thing we know in the township that anybody know about is the Auburn Community College Auburn Hills campus. How about Auburn Hills? And only 7 voted for it and 2 voted against it, but they agreed to put it on the charter. And that's how we got the name Auburn Hills, and we didn't realize it would put us at the top of all the listings and so on, so we would find the thing. Well, back about that time, just before that, side comment, we spent 2 years of agony getting to a charter thing. When it came down to vote, it was determined, Blake Hansel said, wait a minute, we're going to end up Pontiac Township. And so they had the influence to go to the legislature, and the legislature, without any examination, made them a city. Now they had money, they had contacts and so on. So the little part of Lake Angeles, we went through it, but we were very fortunate. We put it up for a vote and it passed, and we went forward. Now back in that time, a little before that, the Silver Dome had been built and was going good. And across the road from the Silver Dome was a vacant piece of property. It's an industrial park today. It was owned by Bob Forte. And Bob Forte went to the Red Wings and said, the old Olympia at Grand River and McGraw was a disaster. Let me build you a new Red Wing arena. And they signed up for it. And they made a contract with Bob to do that. Then Coleman Young went to the family, and I don't know if it was a Stroh family, that was a Canadian family that owned it. And he said, you stay at Joe Louis, and I'll give you all the concessions. And so that was a lucrative, that's where you made money. So they stayed, and they had to pay Bob Forte $2 million in damages. See, the idea is to build that arena and have 2 arenas across from each other, and they would share parking. When this event here, they used both parking lots. So we realized that here's this land sitting across the road, and this was a couple of years before I went to see it. It's a prime place for them to want to, the city of Pontiac to want to annex. And so that was the war story of how the Red Wings almost made it here, and it spurred us to go forward. Okay, we made the request for cityhood. Oh, okay. Ben Davison owned Guiding Glass, and he decided he wanted to build an arena. So he sent Bob Sosnick and Bob Hermsillen, who were 2 of his right hands, he gave him the job of building an arena. Well, he had to come to the township at that time, and I think the township, and they came in and they did not have enough property to develop. And they asked for a design develop type where you design it and build it on the fly. And so the council, and that was the city council, decided, well, we might think about it. And so then Mike Davis, who we are eternally grateful for, Mike lives in the Upper Peninsula. He was very active in the council. He was on the council at the time. He said to Hermsillen and Sosnick, could you put the name Auburn Hills in the name of the arena? Well, they wanted our approval, but they were honorable men. They said, yes, we will. Please let us develop it, because we've got to buy more property for the parking lot, and we'll buy it. So we approved them going ahead to start on that, and they made the promise to put Auburn Hills in. The myth says that there were all kinds of entries, and 5 or 6 people put in Palace of Auburn Hills, and they drew one of them out of the hat. And that group, that person, got 2 tickets to every event that was ever handled at the Palace. Now, I know in the early days that really happened. I don't know how far it went, but that was how we became world famous. We have technology and going, but the bad boy of the basketball team was the Pistons. Put the Palace on the map and put Auburn Hills on the map. And of course, while that was doing it, I don't know whether you know, but there are 4 key high-tech places in the United States. There's Route 128 that's up in the Boston area. There's Silicon Valley. There's the North Carolina Triangle. And there's Auburn Hills. Now, the county likes to take credit and all that, but Auburn Hills as a location has become world famous and is known throughout the world for its high tech. And in southern Michigan, I understand that we have more engineers than any place in the country, more in Silicon Valley and in those places. And they continue to move back here because it's less expensive to live. On the coast, it just drives crazy. The landfill, I talked about that. Okay. During the development, as we're developing the city, we were fortunate. In the old days, I used to raise money for the Boys and Girls Club. This piece of property up here that became the mall was owned by a Swedish company. And I actually got $1,000 out of those folks for the Boys and Girls Club because I thought they were contacting people and said, look, you're part of the community and so on. And they bought into it and they helped it. Well, they then sold it to the mall people. Yeah, they sold it to them and they developed it and so on. And it became a mall, and as you know, they changed it into a place of entertainment and to sale and so on. And they're purported to be one of the 4 areas in the U.S. or in the Detroit area that will survive over the next few years. Go back. Back in the old days, one of the first things that happened to me, it was tragic, was the death of Dennis Deary. It was my first year of council, which was '93. We had lost 2 firefighters previously during World War II, one with a heart attack and one in a road accident. But since that time, Dennis is the only one, thank goodness, that has died on duty for the city. And the story was a kid got mad at his parents, set a fire in the basement they finally figured it out. They called the fire department and we went out to put out the fire. Dennis was the leader of a group of 3. They didn't realize the main floor had burned out and it fell in and he fell. His partner grabbed him, but he fell out of his boot and it was tragic. They died that day. But every year we have a memorial in him, and he has a rock up by the public safety building. But that was him. But that led us then to fire protection. And I take pride in this because I led the way we were providing fire protection to Lake Angeles. And you couldn't get up to the houses because of trees. You couldn't even get the trucks up because of low-hanging stuff. They had no water whatsoever. They conscientiously tried to get a water supply, and they actually looked at putting in pumps and wells and a fire pool, all kinds of things, but they couldn't justify it. And so at I and several other sisters, we said, we do not want another Dennis Deering, because firefighters are courageous and do things to help others. And so we gave up about $50,000 a year of fire protection costs, and we withdrew from Lake Angeles, and the water township does come from today. We had a little incident on a fire thing of showing in the province. As you know, they have a big barn up on their hill, on their complex. And so we put a fire truck right next to the barn. And we run 1,000 feet of hose down to the road and put another pumper. Both are full of water, and then there's a water truck. And so we started the water flowing, and the truck went out and tried to fill up and get back. And we showed that it was about 17 minutes is all we could maintain water, and then we couldn't possibly. And that helped our council understand that it was time to get out of there. But that's the fire story of them. I'm getting almost done here. You know the story of Tinkin Road? Back in the old days, Avon Township, they kept complaining to the people of the congestion on Adams Road. And one shepherd, who was on their township board, said, "Whoa, Auburn Hills has just put in a road from Tinkin on down. Just go on Tinkin and go down over to North Squirrel and down, and you can go." Well, that got the city fathers at that time to their own men. A couple of them unhappy, particularly the ones that lived on the road. And they voted to close the road. And we did. And we closed the road for over 20 years. And several of us kept saying, well, we need to reopen it. So we finally got it open. And Claire and I had the privilege of being the first car to go through. We helped that. But the Tinkin Road story was one of the things of old township attitudes versus the city today. Many of you probably know that the library started in the old mansion, and the recreation department was there, and it didn't prove too well. Well, when Comerica bought the 805 acres, they offered us the Seaburn estate to buy. And then he said, well, Mrs. Brunette, who was West Seaburn's nurse and companion out here, he had away from the town, he built a nice, beautiful house down at the end of University. And that house they wanted to tear down. And he said, well, would you like it? And we said, well, yeah, we'd like it, but we'll help you. And so Shack Brothers helped us literally move that house down, and it became the first unit of our library that we have today. And the Dale Camerad room is in there, and he was instrumental in a lot of the early leadership and the thing we had done in Havens Lane. But that was the original Brunette house, and then Then we build on the expansion, you know, to provide the facilities. But that house has truly historical. If you go in there, you see all the pictures of them moving and so on. One of the things that I tease the council once in a while with this, when we finish paving Tinkin Road, or North Squirrel Road, you know, see, North Squirrel was only paved up to Tinkin. And we paved all the way up. And I said to the council at that time, look, we should, every time somebody develops, we should get some right-of-way, so if we ever want to widen the road, we can. Well, they rolled their eyes because I come up with some wild things. And they didn't follow through. So we're all right today with the neighborhood. If we ever want to make it into a boulevard, which our engineers say we don't need, but I think we need one day. We'll have to go buy all that stuff. Sometimes we need to do things ahead. I'm almost done here. What happened to the paper I had? I wrote a paper on this. Anyway, I got it. We're famous in the state of Michigan because we were the first in the state to put in a diverging diamond interchange. At the old days, we had the interchange down here, and the council said, you know, that's an entrance to our city, and it's kind of dumpy, and so we got talking with the state, and they came up with a grandiose plan to put in the old kind. Now, Peter Auger, who was our city manager at the time, and some of the staff discovered the diverging diamond installation in Missouri. It had come from France. And so the feature is, when you turn onto the expressways, you never cross traffic. You don't cross traffic. And so he pitched that. Now, we city put in $4 million towards the development of that, but the state in total saved about $5 million because they didn't need any extra land. It's more compact. And we were the leading city to get that in, and part of the concession for putting our money in, we have Auburn Hills and that on the bridge in there. Since then, they put it in at 12-mile and 14-mile, and that underneath the expressway because it's so successful in handling traffic. So we are famous for that, if not anything else. Okay, I've got 3 more slips here. Riverwoods Park. How did we get Riverwoods Park? Well, Kay Sandagast, who served 16 years in the council, and I led the charge on that. That was the Craven Farm. They had an unworking farm, and the city leaders came up with a good plan. We just pushed a little. And they said, we went to the Cravens and said, we'd like to buy your farm, but you have it in perpetuity. In other words, you can live there forever, and we won't do anything with it until you're done. Well, they sold us the farm, and Craven lived there on the other end for quite a while, and then Mr. Craven died. Mrs. Craven decided to go with a daughter or somebody, and so we then had a park that we could develop. We put in the restrooms and that and stuff, but we have a tremendous park area there that's undeveloped, that we have open land. But that was just because we saw an opportunity for the city to buy something that would be good for the future. And so that's the story on that one. let's see. Oh, pain I suffered. When I was in my 5th year, we had the audacity to appoint Greg here to the planning commission. And we were accused of putting a realtor on there, and a realtor would know all the inside things that were happening, and it would be unethical. So I'm trying to think of a guy named who lived on Ball Mountain Road. He got up a petition, and our attorney went, defended, and we ended up with a recall for K9. Well, he never proceeded to get any signatures, but it was interesting. It caused me, at that time, I had qualified for a pension because I served 6 years. That was the old system. I had an opportunity for the city to get a 401c plan. The city was a leader in 401c plans. In the old days, you had a defined benefit plan where you promised to pay so much forever until they died. Well, it's a terrible thing to figure out how much money. So that in the year 2000, we determined as a city that we would provide everyone with 501c3 that was employed that wanted it, and all new employees would have that. I think we have 2 permanent employees right now that are still on the pension plan, the defined benefit. Everybody else is in the 501c3. That allows the city to make the contribution to the person, and it belongs then to the person, and we do not have any further obligations. And so we were one of the first cities to do that, and once in a while, the people leave because they want a defined benefit pension, but they're just so unmanageable. We said that we wouldn't do that anymore. So that was it. And Riverwoods. I guess I've run out of things. Do you have any questions or comments that you'd like to make? Because some of you know a lot of this history, that, we've got our myth, not a fact, our myth. Mary Harvey Edwards, who was our mayor, swears that her dad saw them digging a hole the day after Hoffa died. It was the GMC UAW training street on, anyway, and saw that, and so we assume we have Hoffa. Now that's not really true, but we have fun saying, well, we got our own myth because she swears. Her dad said I saw them burying something, and that's where Fanuc Robotics is right now. 700,000 square foot of people. That's an interesting thing. We have about 2 million square feet of robot manufacturing, and we're becoming one of the largest sites in the country with that. Well, any other comments, questions, or anything that I didn't cover that? Yeah, Gene.
Mr. Knight, you're adamant about saying that Oakland University is actually in Auburn Hills and not Rochester. Tell that story a little bit, would you?
Which one?
About how Oakland University is actually in Auburn Hills and not Rochester.
Rochester, yeah.
You're adamant about telling us that story.
Well, I'm not sure what the story is, but no. Universities tend to be awful independent, and they had Meadowbrook Hall, and so they were part of Rochester Hills. All of the campus buildings and the old arena, which is now the credit union, they're all in Auburn Hills. We provide the fire protection and the EMS and so on. And so when Dr. Orr, their president, came in, it just happened that Claire and I went to a basketball game and she and her companion sat down next to us. And I said to her, Dr. Orr, before I retire, I want to get you to say Oakland University is in Auburn Hills. Now you'll see we put it on our signs because that's true. Am I telling? Yeah. And that's still one of my goals. But the key, just in summary, we didn't know we had to have a master plan. On that master plan, we determined we would provide jobs and not homes. And then, as a result of it, we had Leonard came in as our city manager. He enhanced that. We continue to do that. And we have a tax base right now that for us, 80% come from somebody that can't vote. I mean, we as our small thing can determine what the policy is. And for that, we're eternally grateful because they provide a good tax base. Now, Rochester Hills and Auburn Hills are about the same, although I think we may be under now because we're only charging 4.1 mils instead of 5 that was allowed by the charter. Oh, and I've got to mention that. When we did the charter, we set the rates for millage taxes. And the only change we've made is you, the voters, allowed us to go back to the 2.5 mils per fire because it had gone way down because it had to be. And also have approved a road millage, and the council is very faithful in working on roads. We have a 20-year plan that covers all the roads. They're terribly expensive, but we realize the importance of it. And so, yeah, so we have it going. Oakland University is in Auburn Hills. And it says it right on the sign. Oh yeah. We've been audacious enough, and of course now Baker College is their medical school. The medical school is there, and just near there, across the road, was the old bed and breakfast, and they sold out, and Sherry Brothers bought it and named it in memory of their mom. And so that is used for special kids in the honor system to live there and so on. So that bed and breakfast is now part of that. And Baker College continues to be an institution, but it's now an expansion. So there's more of Oakland University in Auburn Hills than before. Any comments? Yeah.
How about your idea about Parkways Boulevard?
About what?
Parkways.
Well, Parkway was put in as a parallel reliever to Auburn Road. And it's Parkway is in good shape. Down by the clock, it's a little two-lane.
Yeah.
But it provides us a secondary access in case there's a closure on Adams or so on. So we decided, and that clock there was all built by the money of you folks.
Wilson Gardner.
Yeah.
Helped raise.
Yeah. Oh, he was the key driver. And you may know, or probably know, 2 years ago we finished our Veterans Memorial, which is in the cemetery. In 1942, the moms formed as a moms club, and they set up two posters listing all the young men and women that served in World War II. And it became the downtown, we had it in there where the village square is, and it was getting down. There was another one that was at the township hall, and it just disappeared. We don't know what happened to it.
Yeah, we looked, but nobody.
We got pictures of it, but anyway, to replace the one downtown, we built a 3-pedestal memorial in the cemetery. One representing anyone killed during active duty service. All the young people that served during World War II, and all those veterans that are buried in the cemetery. And we always have a Memorial Day parade, as you know, and we have a picnic up at the American Legion, and it's always well attended. Any other, yeah, you've got other comments? Yeah, Jim, no.
Years ago,
You talk to me about that. Here.
years ago when Auburn Heights became Auburn Hills, I was at the post office, and the gentleman in there, the postmaster at the time, said, "Oh, there is no place called Auburn Hills." And I said, "You want to come outside with me?" And right on the post office, it had 48057 Auburn Heights, 48326 Auburn Hills. And he goes, "Oh." He didn't even know where he was working.
Gene, you said, the original post office was downtown.
Yeah.
And it's where the candle shop is today, and that was the thing. Then in 1962, they built the current post office, which now is really just
Building.
mail and get some stuff. They moved all the stuff to other places, but we still got our post office.
What's the story of the den, the building where the den is?
Okay, Kitty Davenport was a lady in the community that was a builder and a restorer. In fact, if you go down at the foot of Cherryland, that nice gorgeous house there, which is a business, was one of her creations. And so she was a great believer in restoring. She knew about the log cabin that was up in the Joslin Road, Brown Road area up on the Wall Mountain Ridge, and that they were going to tear it down. And so she moved it downtown and moved it into its location with just the front of the original board and so on. It's purported to be the second oldest living structure in Oakland County. But then Steve Wilhosky, who was our planner, needed an office. So they built an office addition on the back. So the back portion is strictly an add-on, and it was just a square. Well, it was a barber shop for years, and Les was the last runner, and we gave him 2 years' notice that we were going to take over our building, and he got all mad and so on. But anyway, we phased out the barber shop, and we decided that we needed a student center for Oakland University. So we remodeled the whole building to be that. Unfortunately, it wasn't very successful for that. But it's very successful as a downtown meeting place restroom for the new public square that we just put in. And so Kitty Davenport dragged it off the hill, rebuilt it, and took care of it. And she did several other buildings. She was a wonderful lady on bringing back restoring things. Other questions?
I just thought I'd mention on the back table, there are several books of pictures of history of Auburn Hills, so if you would like, you're welcome to look through them.
Yeah.
How many parks does Auburn Hills have?
Riverwoods, Riverside, we have a park up in,
Hawkwood.
well, a story of Hawkwoods. Hawkwoods belonged to the city, the school district in Pontiac. They got so poor that they couldn't continue to run, so they put up the park for sale, Hawkwoods for sale, and we as a township bought it and said we will keep it as a nature center, which we have fulfilled. We put new cabins up there where you can have a gathering and so on. But that came about as part of the poorness of the school district, and that was one of the things we were seeing happen that caused us to say we want jobs rather than homes.
About what year was that you took over Hawkwoods?
I would think Hawkwoods would be mid-70s.
I'm thinking 78 is about when the township was happening, so, or at least that's about when they were developing this campus.
Yeah, well, yeah, but,
It's a really nice facility.
mhm.
Very nice.
And, you know, and it was in kind of poor position. See, we build up. Now, finish up. There's another park up there, and I'm trying to think of the name of it.
Manitoba.
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 It's open Canadian, so
Okay?
Manitoba.
I think there's 6.
Yeah, I'm not, I can't name all the parks.
That's town.
Hmm?
Town will know.
Public squares in the park system now. We have 10, including the public square.
Just wanted to ask the history about that Chrysler Tech Center and how it came to be and all.
Can you repeat that?
I just was curious about the history of that Chrysler Technical Center, their headquarters in Auburn Hills here.
And what did you ask me about?
I was asking about the history of that Chrysler Center.
Okay. Gobert took over and built their building and said we want to control neighborhoods. So we bought the 805, they bought the 805 acres on which we're here and all of that site. And it was just plain horse farm, grazing land. And so they did, Soset Brothers took over the development of the property until Hodak went out and found Chrysler, Lehigh Coca wanted a place where everybody was in the same place rather than all spread out. And so they bought that property on the south end and developed the site there as that. But that's how that came about. I don't know how Phil Hodak got them, but he got them and sold them that property. And then they built the thing. They got about $1 billion for in that site. Why so? Eat up all the cookies, eat up all the punch, look at the books at the back. I got a few moments with a lot of cars from Chrysler and stuff like that. I'm very happy that you're here. Any other comments that people would like to make? Questions? Yes.
When was the last train that came through here?
The last what?
Train.
2000.
2000?
Wow.
Oh,
Was that passenger train?
It was, I think it's actually December, I can't think the exact date, December 1999. So, I mean, 2000 is when the rails actually came out and it started to get developed into a rail trail, so. But yeah, technically it's December 1999.
it ran up to the Ford engine plant in Romeo. And went through and serviced Dillon and Upton's lumber yard. They were about the only two. And so Ford started trucking the engines out, and so the traffic went down. Dillon Upton didn't have that much business, so they decided to do it. First thing the city did, we went to them and we bought the right of way. That was a smart thing. Our leadership in the community said, let's go do that, because we were able to build the Clinton River Trail. And by buying it right away and it owned us, 2 years after we bought it, the state came along and said, we got this old nasty bridge over I-75. It was falling apart, it was part metal, part concrete. And said, will you allow us to build a new bridge? And we said, oh, of course. So we said, certainly. So they spent $1.2 million building that new bridge across at no cost to the city. So that allowed us to have the trail through there. But that was a move. And of course, that track went right through Gray Road and Primary. And I remember one day I had one of my grandkids with me in the old Cadillac. And I pulled up and I didn't look very carefully. And so I stepped on the gas. And here's the train coming. I got across the tracks safely. But boy, did it scare me to see that thing. And that was when Gray went right up to the road. It was still open. See, we closed Gray when we made Squirrel come down and paved it and made it a major road, because we said, well, traffic will come through and go right down Gray to cut through. And of course, Gray was a primary road. It was not a residential street. It was the next level up, but it was all residential. So, so that was before we closed that off. And you see, in the early days, Fire Hall 1 was on the south side of the road and was right next to Gray. And then they did something and they moved it again, and twice they moved the Mom's Memorial and so on. So, but that's all early history, and I don't remember too much of that. Well, I enjoyed. I had more fun than you did. Oh, I loved it. Yeah.
Mr. Knight, Tyson knows from the historical group here
Yes.
that my family was here, the Featherstons of Featherston Road and the Browns of Brown Road. And so they go back into the early 1800s. And Oakland County Historical Society has another piece of genealogy, if you're interested in it, about my family. I came here accident. Somebody up there loves me. I'm within 10 miles of my grandparents' birthplace. My grandmother was born on the Clinton River, where the VW plant is now. It was Half Moon Road then, it wasn't Squirrel Road. That really goes back.
Oh, yeah.
That's a long way.
Well, and that was back when they had Quonset huts there along the river. They had Quonset huts right after the war along the river there.
My great aunt told me that her mother said she couldn't let the cows go into the Clinton River because Mr. Mack was dumping sewerage down in Pontiac and we wanted the cows to be clean.
Well, that reminds me of the Silver Dome. The Silver Dome, when they had an activity on, would open the valve and let the sewage go directly into the river. And we caught them doing that. And the state came and welded up the river. So we couldn't do that anymore. Now, each month, we sampled the river coming in, the river in the middle, and the river going out to make sure nothing's coming in, and we're not putting anything in. Our Brownfield group does that. That's a regular, and we also monitor the Brownfield, which I'm on, also monitors the Galloway Creek. Those are our two waterways. Oh yeah. So when I first came here, you used to walk down the river. There was so much debris in it, and so on. I belonged to it and joined the Optimist Club in '68. And shortly after that, we started cleaning up the river. And we cleaned up, and we've got, I should brought the map, we named all the points, all the places after the club members. But we got that pretty clean. Then the city, bless their heart, came along and said, hey, we're going to help do that. And they took it over. And all during that time, the canoeists and the kayakers and their saws that tend to keep the river clean. Although I had to, a week ago I talked to him, there was a log in the middle of the river. I said, hey, crack that thing out. So I don't know if it's out or not. Check. We're very proud. Riverside Park, I tour it regularly, talk to people. There are always more people from outside the city in the park than there are city people. People just come from all over to just enjoy it. And of course, we were able to build the amphitheater and the water park. And that money, that was all the Downtown Development Authority, the TIF district, gave us $400,000 of the $1,000,001. But the rest of the money was all contributed by individuals and businesses, so that it really cost the city nothing to put in the amphitheater and the splash pad. You know, and it was like the clock tower. It was another joint effort to do that. My current project is to get the amphitheater lights.
Thank you.
Okay, how many of you have lived in town more than 30 years?
How many?
30.
30 what?
More than 30 years.
I've been here more than that.
Well, yeah, for sure. Okay, I just asked that it would be, no. Who has been here the longest? See, I only go back to, I go only through 70 years. I
go back to 72.
How many?
72?
To 1972. I lived in the same house. I moved into
I've been 57.
You first.
Well, I'm just wondering. Yeah, my wife and I walked into buying a house in 57.
My mother was born in 1904 in Oakland County,
Okay.
but in Rose Township.
Yeah, okay.
And all of her relatives were right here in this area.
Well, I was just curious. Yes?
Mr. Knight, on February the 15th of 1952, I was born in St. Joseph's Mercy Hospital.
In what year?
1952.
Okay.
In 1952, my dad brought me home to 202 D. Ray Court up there at the end of Churchill Road by the Nike base you already referenced.
Okay, this is Jack Ferguson, one of our members of the city council.
So I've been here since 1952.
Okay, well, you're the champ.
Well, I might
You're the
be.
champ, because I can only go with 57. Well, it's been an enjoyable evening here. Appreciate it. I just said I had more fun talking about it. And there's other areas you ask questions and I can make something up for you.
That's what it's doing.